Why is this
Family.
better than this?
Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love.
Stay tuned to find out.
You got Lobster, you got it back yet. Lobster's a Jedi, don't you grab it.
The Last Jedi has become one of the most hotly contested films to be released for the mainstream public. It's been absolutely fascinating to follow the two sides locked in a cultural war over the soul of Star Wars. While originally I came on the side of liking the movie, the more I've had the chance to sit and develop my thoughts, the more my opinion begins to sour. While there were some genuinely incredible moments in the movie, there were tons of bafflingly terrible choices made by the relatively talented writer-director Rian Johnson. Like the Canto Bight section of the film, which is largely a huge waste of time. The sequence where Princess Leia shoots into space, then uses the Force to fly her way back into an airlock, which might possibly be the stupidest thing ever seen in Star Wars. And of course, Luke Skywalker spitefully guzzling fresh blue space cow milk. Despite the fact that Disney and Lucasfilms have gone to great efforts to make the galaxy far, far away more diverse and inclusive, the fact remains that characters like Finn, Rey, and most recently Rose Tico feel less like pulp action heroes of the original trilogy and more like genetically engineered Disney Channel ciphers running through a Star Wars theme park than actual characters.
If you have kids at home, this next segment is for you. This Friday, the newest batch of Disney Channel stars grown in the Disney Genetic Engineering Lab will be unveiled to the public.
Right. Now, Tracy, most of our viewers are already familiar with a lot of the products that have come out of the Disney
I
Lab.
am.
You're going to find out exactly how it's done right now because joining us live from the Disney Lab is one of their lead geneticists, Dr. Andrew Rourke. Welcome, Dr. Rourke. There's quite an operation you've got going on out there.
Thanks, Jim.
So the stars that we see on TV are actually grown right here?
That's correct. They're grown and developed here. These child stars are fully ready for the camera or the concert tours or whatever Disney chooses to put them in.
That is simply amazing. Now, how long does it take to actually create a star from scratch?
Well, not very long at all. We use the exact same DNA structure for all of our stars, and then we simply tweak minor details like hair color or skin tone.
Right, yeah, we do have some footage here of some of the well-known creations that have come out of your lab. Let's take a look.
Yes, well, that's model 6831-A, standard male base with a type 3 skin pigmentation.
Wow.
And that's model 6831-B. We give him slightly thicker eyebrows and type 5 skin.
Well, so it's sort of like putting a puzzle together there.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Okay, Mark, thank you so much for coming in and spending some of your morning with us. I can't wait to see some of these new creations
Absolutely.
popping out of the lab.
The infamous Rey is a Mary Sue argument, which I briefly covered in my Max Landis video, may have sort of been an overly broad generalization, but Max Landis does cut to the heart of a greater truth. Don't believe me? Well, I know Max Landis has become an even more of a controversial figure due to the recent social media allegations of sexual assault, plus the less than stellar critical reception of Bright. But why don't we look at what famed writer and film blogger Film Crit Hulk, who still has his leftist progressive card intact and is 100% certified soy boy, and see what he has to say on the matter of the new characters introduced in The Force Awakens.
Rey has a similar problem, in that she's not so much a character as she's a list of positive attributes. The whole discussion of her being a Mary Sue is tangential to the fact that she doesn't have a real psyche being played. Her character could totally be an awesome whiz kid who's great at stuff. But what's her true want? What's stopping her from adventure? What is she failing at? What's her flaw? What does that failure or realization allow her to do at the end of the movie that she could never do at the beginning? All learning comes from failure, after all. And don't say she learns how to use the Force because she doesn't really fail in that pursuit. She just discovers she can use it step by step, just because. The worst part is that the filmmakers know she needs a motivation, but the best of the texture they can give her is that she wants her family back, and doesn't want to leave because of abandonment issues. But forget the fact that this is so muddled and clouded in mystery that it doesn't play as clear motivation at all. And as much as Hulk loves him, Hulk has no idea why Finn is behaving the way he does in this movie. In an earlier scene, he plays the pathos of being a slave who's never been allowed to be a person before. A few scenes later, he's smoothly yet goofily asking if someone's got a boyfriend. Again, it's funny in the moment, but it's not coming from anywhere we understand, other than us liking Daisley Risley too. Ultimately, who is Finn? The truth is, Hulk has no idea. Hulk can't pin his psyche down. With Finn, Hulk just knows Hulk liked all the things he did. But that's not even close to coherent characterization. It's just in the moment pleasing one.
And if you still don't believe me, then let's do a test. This is the classic red letter media character test from their first Plinkett review on The Phantom Menace. And in case you don't remember the rules, here's a reminder.
But let's ask some real people about the Star Wars characters and see what they say. I posed this simple challenge to them. Describe the following Star Wars character without saying what they looked like, what kind of costume they wore, or what their profession or role in the movie was. Describe this character to your friends like they ain't never seen Star Wars. The more descriptive they could get, the stronger the character, eh?
So let's apply this test to some of the new Disney trilogy characters and see how they stack up. I've been able to get some random folks who are willing to take this challenge.
Ray. It's Ray again. She's the girl. She's the girl with the staff.
Ray, hot?
Damn, how can I describe her?
Very, generic. Very, like, every woman, very, strong, but, like...
She's trepidatious but brave.
Millennial.
She's, like, literally a starving person. Hardworking, ambitious.
She's kind of brave, but in reality she really isn't. And,
I don't know what else to say.
Damn, I don't know, bro. Fucking next character, next fucking character, bro.
Fed.
He underused in the,
He's like a homemade pussy.
He feels, like, conflicted as a character at first, but then...
he's like an undercover pussy.
He's a little too eager.
Very driven to please.
Very loyal. God, dumb. Not great for your main character to be, like, kind of stupid. To, like, be so dumb that he, like, parks his speeder on a public beach and then runs into a casino.
Poe Dameron.
They were trying to make him the modern day Han Solo.
The guy with the cool hairdo.
And he just became very whiny.
Funny, snarky, smarmy.
He's like a cool 80s guy. He's funny as fuck.
Hot-headed, does what he wants. I feel like he's like the Raphael of the group. Even though he starts off so strong, it's a very bad mission that fails horribly.
Kylo Ren.
He's a neglected child.
Emo.
He's just like a failure, basically.
I want to say immature. He lashes out a lot in anger. Tries a little too hard, you know? A little bit of a poser.
A crazy motherfucker.
And almost in a childish way.
Because it's like, on one hand, he's like, I want to burn the whole galaxy down. On the other hand, he's like, I want to rule the galaxy because everyone else sucks.
Rose Tika.
Modern day Jar Jar Binks.
She's fucking annoying.
Bleeding Heart.
Character and waste of time.
Hey, I'm sorry that your sister died and everything in a fucking battle. Over dramatic fuck.
She cares a lot about causes.
She loves animals.
Space horses.
Goes with what she feels, which is not necessarily good strategy. I feel like
she's fucking annoying, bro. All right.
Her and Finn get a lot of people killed, like a lot of people.
That's the sort of problem with The Last Jedi. The only character that's really seems to be working is Kylo Ren, and none of the other new characters introduced are really getting the material they need to stand out. But the biggest problem, and what's really hurting things overall, is the fact that there was never any overarching game plan for any of this. J.J. Abrams essentially constructed several mystery boxes without any idea what might be in them, leaving it behind for other filmmakers to figure out and come up with good payoffs. When it was time for Rian Johnson to take his turn at bat, he basically smashed the entire thing to the ground, showing that the mystery boxes that JJ had laid out in The Force Awakens were all empty with nothing inside. He even admitted that when he started working on The Last Jedi, that there was no plan in place for the overall trilogy, so he was left to do whatever he wanted and decided to opt for a deconstructionist narrative, taking a figurative sledgehammer to the Star Wars mythos. This is a terrible way to build an ongoing franchise. Essentially, Rian Johnson smashed every mystery box and proved that it was all bullshit with no greater thought or planning around it. Who is Snoke? Doesn't matter, he's dead. Who are Rey's parents? Don't care, they were nobodies who sold her for drinking money, even though the flashbacks show them leaving her behind as they jet away on a spaceship instead of walking away with space booze. The idea of trying to reconstruct Star Wars into a sort of Occupy Coruscant narrative about striking back against the rich 1% feels disingenuous, especially coming from Disney, the super conglomerate that just can't stop itself from devouring just about every other media company. One of the laziest things done in the new trilogy was setting things back to the original status quo with the First Order taking the place of the Empire, as opposed to coming up with some new kind of threat. It's this laziness that has marred the new trilogy, but it's a weird contradiction between being overly convoluted and kind of half-assed. Take the First Order. How do they exist? Why does the Empire or something like the Empire exist 30 plus years after the death of the Emperor and the destruction of the second Death Star? Do they control everything? Are they a fringe group? If they are a fringe group, why doesn't the New Republic do anything about them? The Force Awakens does next to nothing to give any context about the First Order, even if the lazy answer we all know in our hearts is because Disney wanted to deliver on giving a new enemy that felt the same as not to anger the fans. Despite the fact that the more you look into the new status quo, the more complicated it gets. For example, if you want the full context on the past 30 years of history between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, you need to read dozens of books in the Journey to a Force Awakens publishing line, which includes Star Wars Aftermath, Lost Stars, Moving Target, A Princess Leia Adventure, Star Wars Smuggler's Run, a Han and Solo and Chewbacca Adventure, The Weapon of a Jedi, a Luke Skywalker Adventure, The Perfect Weapon, All Creatures Great and Small, The Crimson Corsair and the Last Treasure of Count Dooku, The Face of Evil, High Noon on Jakku, Star Wars Shattered Empire, Star Wars Absolutely Everything You Need to Know, Star Wars Ships of the Galaxy, Star Wars Look and Find, Star Wars Droid Factory, Star Wars Build a Droid Sticker Activity Book, and if you read all of that, then maybe, just maybe, you'll have an idea of why everything's different, but still kind of the same. It's an overly complicated explanation to a half-assed result, and don't even get me started on the Resistance. This is where things kind of break down. Before the new era of Star Wars hit, there were all kinds of rumors that we'd be seeing a new media war machine of interconnected transmedia storytelling that would make Marvel Studios blush. All of the new books, comics, and movies would all connect to form a new era of super rewarding transmedia storytelling, the likes the world has never seen. But what we learned in The Last Jedi is that it's all kind of a lie. Nothing has been planned or outlined, and there was no treatment for episode 8 or 9, and Rian Johnson was allowed to pretty much do whatever the hell he pleased. This is beyond frustrating because in our new franchise-heavy cinematic universe media landscape, if you don't have some larger serialized storytelling goals, then what's the point? This has become abundantly clear where J.J. Abrams and his infamous mystery box brand of storytelling was smashed open to be revealed that there was nothing inside. Hey, want to learn about Rey's parents? Well, doesn't matter. Curious about who the heck this Supreme Leader Snooki guy is? He's dead. Think those Knights of Ren sound kinda cool? Well, doesn't matter. Which one could argue makes sense for a deconstructivist narrative, but that's the thing. J.J. Abrams built these things up as elements we are supposed to care about. Look at Rey's flashback of being left behind by her parents. She's crying as the ship flies away. This isn't a I'm being sold for drinking money kind of flashback. This is a you're important and we're leaving you in the middle of nowhere for your own protection kind of flashback. But that's sort of one of the biggest problems with J.J. Abrams. He's a snake oil salesman trading in high-concept malarkey, promising amazing, awesome reveals, when in fact there's never been anything worth getting invested into. And there is never anything in the mystery box that is ever worth the hype. Some could argue that the enticement of the mystery box is worth the reward, that the journey of all the characters in Lost is far greater than the metaphysical drain pump that lies at the center of the island. But I think that's just lazy, and if you look at other long-running franchises in our current cinematic environment, you see ones that are getting people the most excited are the ones that give a shit. We're well beyond the old Hollywood paradigm where a sequel could just be a lazy retread of the previous movie. Now we live in an era where audiences demand long-form serialized storytelling. For example, let's take a look at the Fast and Furious franchise, a global mega hit that's grown far beyond its roots as a Point Break with streetcars. The reason why it became such a huge deal is because the people behind it gave a shit. Director Justin Lin, after taking over the series in Fast and Furious, Tokyo Drift, managed to create a unique continuity where Fast and Furious 4 through 6 were prequels to the third one, and the separate timelines converged in the 7th film. While the stunts and car chases grew more and more ridiculous, Justin always managed to stay true to the characters and give a damn in terms of rewarding the continuity that had previously been set up. This is how the Fast and Furious films' theme of family.
Family.
Family. Family.
Family.
Family. Family. Family. Family. Family. Family.
Family. Family.
Family.
Family.
Family.
Family.
Family. Family. Family. Salute me, familia.
Went from being a dumb platitude to becoming something that transcended the films to become something real. It's little details like having the main character, Sean from Tokyo Drift, appear in Furious 7. It's this attention to detail and continuity, and just plain giving a shit, that kept audiences engaged, so it doesn't matter if the Fast and Furious crew is fighting a tank, a submarine, or driving out of a Dubai skyscraper. As long as the films respect the characters, people will continue to care. Nowhere is this more apparent than the outpouring of love after the passing of Paul Walker. To the cast and crew and millions of people across the globe, he became a part of their family just because the series gave a damn. That's why the official music video with his tribute farewell song See You Again has been viewed by literally half the people on the goddamn planet. If you give a shit, then we'll give a shit, which is what makes the current era of Star Wars so frustrating. Nobody wants to watch a game of billion-dollar telephone between main series entries handed off from one director to the next, where they're making it up as they go along. In long-form serialized storytelling, you have to manage your setups and make sure you follow through with a payoff. It's basic bitch storytelling 101, and the biggest problem is that Rian Johnson's deconstructive narrative was simply the worst storytelling choice at this point in time. This was an opportunity to pay off things set up in The Force Awakens and actually give some meat to the new characters that were introduced, because at this point, they're less interesting characters and more like generic, attractive ciphers with a smattering of positive traits. Splitting up Rey, Finn, and Poe, each to go on their own pointless side quest, was the worst choice when what we really needed to see was the chemistry of this new core trio solidify and deepen, because now we're left with the final installment being handled by the one guy who has never created a satisfying ending to anything in his entire career, with characters that still feel very limp and poorly defined, that we have very little invested in. I've heard arguments that the one reason why the deconstructive narrative works in The Last Jedi is because we've seen so many Star Wars films before, and it's time to have our expectations subverted. But that's the similar problem with the DC universe ran into. You can't deconstruct Batman and Superman until you've actually put in the legwork to establish the new iterations of these characters a bit more firmly. The reason why Logan worked so brilliantly is because it had a decade of X-Men films featuring the character that preceded it. Throwing in a deconstruction when your central leads haven't quite earned their place within the Star Wars universe is a terrible idea. Maybe you can do that in the next trilogy or spin-off or whatever, but you need to establish that these are characters that can actually carry the torch once it's been passed off, as opposed to being simple Disney Channel kids running around in a Star Wars theme park. What's especially puzzling is just a few blocks away, Marvel is absolutely killing it in terms of handling their cinematic universe with interconnected serialized storytelling. For example, let's take a look at the arc of Iron Man. Over the course of 8 movies, we get a pretty interesting story. He starts off being an arrogant, smarmy douchebag who rebels in how much money he can make from his destructive inventions. But after he's kidnapped, he learns firsthand the destruction he's been indirectly responsible for, and with the help of Yo Hin-sen, he makes his first armor and escapes. He reforms his ways, vowing to never make weapons again, and to iterate on his armor to make up for all the lives he's ruined. In Iron Man 2, he's still a hero who thinks he's invincible until he confronts his own mortality when he learns his arc reactor core is killing him. After confronting the demons of his past and his own abrasive father, he forges forward and learns to let people like Pepper and James Rhodes into his life. Then comes the Avengers, where his brand of heroism comes in direct conflict with Captain America. Iron Man believes all problems can be solved with his genius. He doesn't need to worry about making the ultimate sacrifice or confronting his mortality again, when he can always outthink and outpilot any problem he faces, until he's confronted with a threat beyond his world with Loki and the Chitauri. So he's forced to make his self-sacrificing play to detonate the nuke in the wormhole, taking a lesson in the old-school heroism from his rival Steve Rogers. But we see the aftermath of his sacrifice in Iron Man 3, where the incident gives him PTSD, where he's afflicted with panic attacks and fear of an eventual alien threat. Something bigger than him. Something that he can't outsmart or outthink. To compensate for this, he continues to build more and more armored suits, but it's never enough. He can never provide the security to make himself feel safe. In the course of the film, he meets a little whiz kid who's kind of like a younger version of himself. But Tony still isn't ready to accept anyone in his life except for himself, and after a brief period of time with him, he ultimately leaves the kid behind, not ready to take him in his heart. The malignant tumor of his PTSD translates into Avengers Age of Ultron. He's managed to subdue his demons, but they haven't gone away, and his attempt to create a shield to protect the world with his Ultron project creates a malevolent AI that's the manifestation of all his worst aspects that nearly destroys the world. Now in his desire to help save people, he's managed to hurt more of them than ever before. The consequences come to roost in Civil War, where plagued with guilt he signs the Sokovia Accords, promising to regulate the activities of the Avengers, seeing his unregulated and unfettered global vigilantism as being part of the problem. His new neurosis of taking responsibility, driven by his latent PTSD, drives a wedge in his relationship with Captain America, ultimately breaking apart the Avengers and critically wounding his best friend. In his darkest moment, though, there is light. He meets another boy named Peter Parker who reminds him of himself. Peter, being a gifted science whiz kid, becomes a sort of foster son to Tony Stark. Unlike how before he was completely unwilling to accept a kid in his life and even entertain the idea of taking responsibility of mentoring or fatherhood, now after his failings have tempered his arrogance, Tony is finally ready to let down his wall, let someone else become the focus of his life that isn't him. And we see this in Spider-Man Homecoming as he gives a guiding hand and support to Peter Parker. This culminates in Avengers Infinity War, where after he proposes to Pepper Potts in Spider-Man Homecoming, he talks to her about wanting to have a family and having a kid, and feeling responsible enough to devote himself to something besides himself. But his biggest fear finally manifests when Thanos goes into action and he makes his biggest fear come to life. Not only does Tony lose almost everyone, but Peter Parker, the boy he swore to protect, and guide wastes away and turns into ash and dies in his arms, all while begging him that he's sorry and that he doesn't want to go. This hits hard because it's the dark culmination of an arc we've seen play out over the course of 8 different movies, all building up to this single moment. Even though we know Spider-Man will be back because Spider-Man Homecoming 2 is scheduled to come out next year, the cumulative weight leading up to this moment earns every dramatic beat. Because for whatever criticisms you might level at the MCU, it has been guided by a consistent and steady hand of super producer Kevin Feige, and because the creative decisions are not made on a whim, because longer story arcs are allowed to play out across several films, it works. That's all we want as an audience. We want the people creating these stories to give as much of a shit as the people watching them. Giving a shit is how you turn a mid-tier pretty boy actor like Paul Walker into something more than just a generic action star. It's how you transform him into a consistent friend that audiences love just as much as Dominic Toretto. So when tragedy does strike beyond the confines of the silver screen, it literally moves half of the planet to tears. And when there isn't a plan, when you tell us, the audience, that we should care, then we see that you didn't, it just leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And the sequel paradigm has changed. People don't just want to see Die Hard in an airplane or Die Hard on a bus. We want to see longer ongoing series that feature growth and progression. If you don't believe that, then just look at the numbers. Just about every single Marvel movie where they grow or change one of their main characters saw an increase in revenue. Captain America went from making $370 million in his first movie to making $714 million in his second, to crossing $1 billion by the time he reached his third. Thor also saw a jump from $449 million to $644 million, and then eventually in Thor Ragnarok made $853 million. And if you compare The Last Jedi to The Force Awakens, which made over $2 billion, The Last Jedi only made $1,300 million, which, while not bad by any means, does indicate a lack of enthusiasm and indifference after all the goodwill that was built up and wasted from the generally positive reception of The Force Awakens. And now as we go into episode 9 with the final conclusion, with several characters we don't really like or understand, with arcs that have not been consistent, being headed up by the man whose sole defining career trait is never giving anything a satisfying conclusion, and usually running away and leaving things in the hands of other people to wrap up, it doesn't bode well given the fact that Disney wants to build a Star Wars empire worthy of rivaling their Marvel crown jewel. If nothing else, I at least hope Kathleen Kennedy has the humility to give Kevin Feige a call, so maybe she can ask for some pointers. Hope you enjoyed this video. It was something I wanted to make for a while, but it took a while to get all the pieces together. But I certainly hope you enjoyed it, and it was worth the wait. This weekend is my birthday! Yay! Happy birthday to me! So to celebrate, I'm going to be holding a birthday bash where I'm going to post some of my older content that I made, when I was younger, up for your enjoyment to cringe or scrutinize and have fun with. And I will be ending it on the 28th, which is my official birthday, with the play I mentioned in my Gentle video. So for all of you who've been asking to see that, you will get to see it on May 28th. So look forward to that, and thank you for watching this video. And if you haven't already, check out some of my other video essays that will be coming up in the annotations in the next few seconds. And remember, lobsters and tennis, but don't you grab it.